Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to the stream. How's it going? Gonna be starting things off with watching this video from Jenkins. Why do pro players farm faster than you? Now I'm gonna make a couple of guesses here. 1, not dying. 2, they run faster and they have a more direct route. And 3, they know which camp they should farm when. Let's check it out.
Dota 2 is an old game with an aging player base, and of course, that's not to say that you're necessarily old or anything like that, but even a lot of the young players have actually played the game for quite a few years. The bottom line is that a lot of people have played this game for a very long time, and as a result of this, there are certain ideas that are set in stone for people that they don't realize are actually losing them a tremendous amount of MMR. One of these misunderstood, set-in-stone concepts is the nature of farming the jungle in Dota. Most people think that supports shouldn't take farm. A lot of other people think that carries take the highest farming priority in a game. And most people also think that your jungle is the safest place to farm. And all of these people are actually right, but it depends on the phase of the game that you're in. You can think of the map of the jungle camps in Dota as having 2 possible colors.
So this video is a little older, of course. It's from 2 years ago, but we'll focus on the concepts that remain true.
Green means that they're controlled by your team and therefore safe to farm, and red means that they're controlled by the enemy team and therefore unsafe to farm. At the start of the game, the map usually looks something like this.
Yeah.
But as towers fall, outposts get captured, and the enemy team starts moving around the map will look completely different in terms of where you can and cannot farm. In fact, the map can be broken down even further to include orange jungle camps, which are camps that are contested between the 2 teams and are relatively dangerous. And here's where things get interesting, because this is where a lot of people lose a lot of MMR without even realizing it.
I just lost 120 MMR yesterday, AMA.
Some people play heroes mechanically very well, and they do extremely well in their lane, they press their buttons correctly in teamfights, but they lose the game because they're capable of farming orange camps, but then they take green camps away from their team instead. What this does is it takes green camps away from the heroes that need to farm, but aren't quite strong enough to farm orange camps. In the early game, this is usually going to be the carry that needs the green camps, and in the mid to late game, it's usually the supports that need the green camps. So if you're a carry in the late game and you're taking easy camps to farm, you might be losing a lot of games because of that. If you're a support and you're in the early game and you're taking away green camps, you might be losing games and your carry might look like shit, but it's actually you.
The interesting thing about those moments is that you are sometimes guilty of a loss without knowing it. I imagine this is actually super common. Yesterday I had a couple of games where, like the Klinks position 3 game yesterday, we started as position 3 and we had a bit of a rough game. Then we started to become really powerful. We could one-shot 3 people at the same time. We were level 28, the next highest level in the game was 26. But it was very clear to see that I made a couple of greedy oversteps on the high ground, died, and everything came undone after that. It was clear why I lost. But something like a position 3 in offlane, over farming the safest place, leaving the position 1, nothing left, that's going to be much less obvious. If you're particularly not self-introspective, you may even say like, wow, my position 1 sucked, he had no farm, he didn't seem strong at all, and it could be anyone's fault except position 1. Could be support, could be offlane, or it might actually be them. And I say fault very lightly because, you know, it's just a game, even if the game is everything. You know, but like people make mistakes, and it may be their mistake, but it may also be other people's mistake.
The flip side, some heroes by their nature are only strong enough to farm green camps at a certain point in the game, and they try to farm orange camps. So then people feed on heroes that just shouldn't be farming those camps altogether, they get killed a lot, and they lose a lot of MMR. So the basic conclusion of this concept is to try to figure out roughly what camps on the map are red, which are orange, and which are green.
This apparently never called on in discussion, at least with people. People never say red, orange, green. It's a Jenkins system, but it kind of makes sense.
And then farm the most dangerous ones.
I've heard people say easy camp, hard camp, but the funny thing is sometimes I would say ancient camp is hard, the pineapple camp would be medium, and then you've got like the harpy camp is small. But sometimes the Harpy camp can be difficult because it breaks someone with double passives, and sometimes the medium camp can be hard because the pineapples don't get killed as easily as, let's say, 4 satyrs by Razor Magic build, for instance. So I guess it's just like in Warcraft, you need to know each camp, but he's here talking about the locations of each camp.
It's possible that you can. It's important to note that I said try to figure out roughly what camps are the different colors, because I can see a lot of people possibly being overwhelmed by the complexity of figuring out exactly what camps you can and can't farm. But it's actually a lot easier than you might think, simply because the creeps respawn so quickly that in most games you don't need to know exactly what camps are safe and what camps are dangerous. You only need to figure out a few of them, go to the good ones, ignore the bad ones. To extend this concept even further, as the enemy team moves around the map, you can identify what camps are currently orange and about to become red, and if you can farm those just before the enemy team moves into an area, then you're taking green camps away from them, which of course is going to be quite efficient because the enemy team's going to have less to farm, and then you're going to be opening up a bunch of green camps for your team to farm as well, and orange camps. So this is going to be super efficient. This is basically the only safe way that you can farm red camps in Dota.
Yeah, I guess it's the most valuable when you do take a camp away right before they would have wanted to take it. And when you get it wrong, you die.
Take a look at this replay where we have mid one playing Juggernaut, and he chooses to farm orange camps instead of green camps or, of course, red camps. Now, in order to facilitate himself farming these particular orange camps, first he needs to push out the wave. This is a big reason why pushing creep waves is so important. Yes, it gets you just about the same amount of farm in terms of the gold that the creeps drop, but it secures you access to orange camps so your team can take the green camps. So he spins the wave, walks over to this easy camp, which is on the enemy side, and now if he didn't push the creep wave, there's absolutely no way he would have access to this. You can even see that the enemy Sand King is chilling in the area, and if mid one wasn't here taking this farm, then Sand King would be taking it away from him.
Sand King just did a double creep wave stack, huh?
And if mid have access to this camp, which is on the enemy side, and now if he didn't push the creep wave, there's absolutely walks over to this easy
so that he can dark swarm all of them.
Camp, which is on the enemy side, and now if he didn't push the creep wave, there's absolutely no way he would have access to this. You can even see that the enemy Sand King is chilling in the area, and if mid one wasn't here taking this farm, then Sand King would be taking it away from him. And because Sand King is there, there's a puck running at him. He looks to farm backwards away from the enemy team, so he might try to take that hard camp if there wasn't a puck there, but there's no easy camp now that the puck can farm, and he heads back to his own jungle where he can take the green camps. And of course,
it looks so funny, but the rotation of Juggernaut, position 1, doing this and then this and this, that didn't change.
Of course, this is perfectly okay because there are only a small number of orange camps in the game, and there are a lot more green camps. So basically, the rule of thumb is farm orange camps first, then farm backwards when the enemy team comes
Poor man's shield.
to contest you, and then farm the green camps. Moreover, when people feel like they can't farm in the game, it's usually not because there's no farm on the map. It's generally because there are red camps that are blocking off the available green camps, and all you need to do is figure out how to get to the green camps rather than sit in your base. This is the reason why...
Hold on. He's saying when you're being like pushed in?
It's green camps. Moreover, when people feel like they can't farm in the game, it's usually not because there's no farm on the map. It's generally because...
when all the towers are dead and you're being contained and you've got like 5 people standing on the high ground AFK. In theory, ideal would be you sneak across the map, you start taking their jungle without ever being seen in the lane.
There are red camps that are blocking off the available green
camps. This positioning seems very unorthodox to me at 13 minutes for a +1. No, it's actually really standard. So if you look at this map, right, imagine that this tower is still up for Radiant, but this tower is down. You then look at the distance of TP emergency help from this offlane tower to this safe lane tower, the tier 2. And then you draw a line from here to here. You see where the middle point is, and that's about here. Yeah, that means that where the lane meets, which is here, is actually closer to the offlane tower than to the tier 2 of Radiant. And that means that when the lane is in equilibrium, it is not safe for the Radiant position 1 to be here anymore because his tower got killed. Now, this tower doesn't always go down, but it is, in the current meta, as of 2022 at least, it is nice when the mid laner and even the position 5 come together to the bottom lane with 4 people to push this tower down, if that's what it takes. Or fewer if off lane is winning the lane hard. The point is, this tower is a priority target to be killed between 9 to 12 minutes in order to close off this section of the map for position 1, who will then have to seek refuge to the other lane and farm this. Ideally, Radiant's side has done the same thing to this tower. So now suddenly this has become a Radiant place, if you look at my cursor all the way this. That means he can take 1 wave, 2 wave, maybe this medium camp, fall back to the Ancient, do this, and then do the waves again. Now that requires his support, or offlane or whatever, probably his support, to create space and vision here so that he's more safe. If they don't stand guard here to counter gank or warn or tank the gank, then surely they should be doing something else. Maybe the other 4 players are pushing mid, pushing bot, a push that is so strong, or maybe they're ganking the Ancients, a push that is so strong that it draws everyone away from the top, leaving the Juggernaut, in this case, to freely farm top. So it is not unusual. And while I have been coached that this is the ideal way, that between the 6 to 12 minute mark, there's going to be coordinated ganks on the safe lane tower. And why is it good? So the safe lane tower is safe initially, but after that it becomes less safe. Why? It's because safe lane tower and tier 2 are really far away from each other. So there's all this space in between here where they can be ganked, they can be put up vision by Dire, and therefore eventually this tower becomes an island that becomes untenable to defend. While this might be pro theory and technically correct, games don't always go that way. And I see some people saying in chat, if only my games were like that in pubs. And yeah, I agree. It doesn't always go like that. So what do you do when enemy Dire tower does not go down, but yours does? Well, that shrinks the map, and that is the beginning of losing, right? Because now Dire only has this, which is markedly maybe 2/5 of the map. Right? You lose the tower, but you didn't get that tower. Now what does position 1 do? Well, maybe he'll do this, take a little bit of mid, then take other camp somewhere over here, as we are printing out more addresses for the Christmas card. The printer's in my room, and we have a Wi-Fi printer. So yeah, we're sending around Christmas cards this year again, for the 3rd year in a row, printing out some addresses. But anyway, the point is, yes, if only 1 tower goes down, that shrinks the map. So let's go on.
Camps, and all you need to do is figure out how.
By the way, Red Factor, we don't have your address. Can you follow Cassandra with your address? I saw that your address is not in. Want to send you a card too, as a appreciated mod of the stream.
To get to the green camps rather than sit in your base. This is the reason why a lot of the time in Dota it feels like you're trapped inside your base or you're trapped in a certain jungle in Dota.
Yep.
It's not because the enemy team is actually consuming the entire map. They're just blocking you from the available green camps with red camps by putting their heroes in an area.
So I find that a lot of people instinctively just turtle up when they're being contained. And it's very important to be out there as a carry, to be somewhere where the opponent is not. If you're being contained, you cannot be contained. You need to be somewhere out there in the wild, which means that the hardest decision you'll ever make is whether you TP to come back home to defend. If you are ready, if you are complete, you're metamorphized, you're going Super Saiyan, you're going Bankai, then you should go. But otherwise, very likely you should stay here, sometimes cut a creep wave, which is greater risk because now they know where you are. You can cut a creep wave if you're Nature's Prophet and then teleport over here and do the same thing. But you can't stay in the same neck of the woods, if you will, for too long. If you are going to stay there for long, then it better be in a unwarded enemy jungle. And
there are a couple of
you never go to the lane.
Solutions to this particular problem of feeling like you're trapped somewhere and you can't farm.
I heard an interesting thing about BKB. It's a farming item in the sense that if you have BKB, you can push far. You can get collapsed on BKB and TP out. That's really interesting, actually. Yes, Brutus. That's true. The same thing with Juggernaut, right? Juggernaut with Blade Fury has that always. I guess Flesh Stealer has it as well. Life Stealer.
1. Try to sneak yourself to the other side of the map where the camps are using a solo smoke or some sort of invisibility. 2. Instead of TPing back to base after split pushing, stay in the trees, so that way you can continue farming even if your map becomes closed off. This is probably the better solution because it avoids the problem even happening in the first place. Some ways of identifying what camps are dangerous and what camps aren't are 1. Camps near vision are almost always green because if the enemy team shows up there, you'll very literally see them.
Yeah.
2. Look at where the lane creeps are. If a creep wave is up way past a...
Why would this be the case? I've been thinking about this one, right? It's kind of the case because people always want to push out creep waves first, and if the wave is near their tower, then it feels safe for them, then they're probably going to do it. But because it is true, and because they give vision, you can go to the part where there's no vision and abuse the fact that behind the creep wave is probably going to be a risk taker, someone that feels that it is safe. Yeah, creeps are wards, so that's sometimes why you should like smoke or walk past the wave without being seen and gank some jungler behind it. Because of the enemies, yeah. Yeah, it depends if they are going to commit to pushing out the creep wave or do like a gamble, a trick, or maybe Riki gave them vision.
The jungle camp, chances are an adjacent camp to that lane is going to be a green camp because the enemy
But this is true in terms of optimum game theory, I suppose.
team will have to kill or walk through
Yeah, they would have to skip the farm of the creeps.
the camp to that lane is going to be a green camp because the enemy team will have to kill or walk through the creep wave first before contesting you at your camp. 3. Look at where your team is. If your team is really far away from you, chances are you're in orange or red camp territory.
I've been doing this a lot yesterday. Like, if there's anything I can learn from yesterday is that I need to be way more freaking paranoid, reliant on team, and less risk-taking. Like, I wouldn't say that dying 10 times in a game teaches you a lot, except that you are on a like wrong path of risk-taking and gambling. That's my goal for today, is to play a lot safer, because the world is full of potential so long as you're alive, and it's so over every time you die in the game of Dota 2. Because I've had games where people save me, but they were near, and then it can be okay. You're Tidehunter, your team is kind of near, you're taking something risky, it's okay. You Ravage, everyone comes in, boom, boom, boom. Maybe you died, they kill like 4 people. But the super far off-lane Razor games, where I'm like, well, I just hope they're not coming for me.
Usually what
Not as good.
happens is your team will form a zone where the camps within it are green and the camps on the outskirts of it are orange. 4. Naturally, towers give you protection because your team can TP to them if you're in danger, and they also give vision and then push lane creeps. So camps behind and adjacent to towers are typically pretty safe and usually green.
Irrational optimism, yeah, true. And it can be okay if you pull people to gank you, and even if they kill you, if you're simultaneously pushing enemy tower. But if all of your allies are in safe areas, I think that's another one to consider. How much at risk and how much in vision are my allies right now? Are they pushing a tower? Are they defending a tower? Are they, yo, Bly, what's up, man? Thanks for the sub. I saw your tweet, actually. Send me a message on Discord if you can. So, yeah. If your allies are in vision and taking a risk and pushing a tower, then they are more at risk sometimes because they could lose a 4v5. But if all your allies are missing, not in vision, jungling, and you are in vision and alone, then you're super at risk. Because just imagine how you look like on the minimap of the opponent. Literally the only guy gankable in vision, like the only obvious thing to do for them. Like, they may get better value by doing a 5-man smoke into your ancients. Maybe they can kill more value heroes, but that is a question mark to them. They may not have thought that far ahead. They see you alone on the minimap. That's an easy one.
Some ways of knowing if you're an orange or a green camp farmer include: 1. If you have lots of mobility, you can probably farm orange camps. 2. If you're hard for the enemy team to kill because you have BKB, levels, you're snowballing, or whatever, then you're probably an orange camp farmer. 3. If your life doesn't really matter that much and your farm doesn't matter either, in other words, if you're an offlaner or a support and someone on your team, usually the carry, really needs some items, then chances are it's your job to farm orange camps in order to make space for them. 4. If your job
Yeah, so sometimes that may be true, but not if your net worth is tanked so much that you become useless. There's some heroes that need it more as an offlaner than others. I feel like it's not as bad if I die on Underlord, though it's really hard to die on Underlord, like that game yesterday. Like Razor definitely needs net worth to be relevant. So you need to, yeah, like Razor is actually kind of a fake off lane. Like he wants to, in my opinion, I've been thinking, right? I have been like yielding farm as Razor to my 2 and 1. And it is definitely selfish to like queue up as an offlane and then overtake 1 or something, like steal it from him. That's wrong. But I don't feel like 2 should necessarily be ahead of 3 anymore in the middle. Like they're higher on the farm ladder, but I feel like that's true for the first half of the game. Am I wrong in thinking that? Like, wouldn't it be ideal? Like the fact the position 2 is usually a hero that gets early game strength because they solo XP, and they're good at the duel, they're good at the early game, they're good at ganking. Okay, they can keep that up. That makes them one of the support who also gank, right? And they're the strongest one. They're bullying people, slapping people with their net worth. But then they don't necessarily have to take prio all game long over a 3. Like sometimes I might be a 3 Razor and my mid is, I mean, if it's a Shadow Fiend, then I see my 2 mid as a 1. But if mid is, I mean, name an example. If it's a Tusk, does he need to be top net worth over an offlane Razor all the time? Not necessarily, I don't think. A Zeus or a Puck, yeah, it depends on scaling, right? So, yeah, the question is how valuable is the scaling for them?
job is to get a specific item timing to win the
There are 3 types of offlane: tank aura boy, lane sitter, and anti-carry. Pseudo carry. Anti-carry, pseudo carry, lane sitter, tank aura boy. Yeah, that makes sense. So Tide Hunter is a tank aura boy. Underlord is a tank aura boy. Then a lane sitter would be like Brood Mother and Beastmaster. And Enigma. And an anti-carry, pseudo carry would be like Razor and Bloodseeker.
game and you're the next timing, then you're a green farmer. This isn't necessarily the carry though. If you're an Earthshaker and you desperately need a Blink Dagger to win fights, sometimes your carry should actually farm orange camps even if it results in them dying and you farm the green camps. If you find yourself at an MMR plateau, I would highly recommend watching one of your own replays and trying to identify the times where you farmed camps that you shouldn't have been farming, aka where you a green camp farmer and you're farming orange camps, where you're trying to farm red camps, etc., etc.
Maybe we can do that today. The problem is watching your own replays can be really painful. As painful as it is for 12k MMR chatters to watch said streamer. This is a very old video. Yeah, it's old, but like I don't mind. Like 100% is accurate. I watch these because Jenkins is a great narrator, great structural explanations, and you agree or you don't agree, but it stimulates and provokes thought and discussion.
I guarantee
And the concepts are all true. Yeah.
you this happens much, much more often than people think. And this is one of the most subtle but hugely impactful game-losing mistakes that you can make in Dota. Thanks a lot for watching. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. I really appreciate you, and I hope to see you in another video.
Yeah, maybe we'll watch some of our own replays to analyze whether we were safe or not.
For as long as I can remember.
regardless of what happened afterwards, whether we paid for it with the capital price. Nice.